1993, a huge change happened in Scottish football. Queen's Park won the Scottish Cup for the 10th and final time, but the game had turned professional that year. And what's interesting is there's also a medal on display in this cabinet from the 1894 Scottish Cup final, and it's the first Scottish Cup final where Celtic would face Rangers. So almost overnight, you see the change that happens in Scottish football as the smaller clubs from the villages like Renton, Vale of Leven would fall away, and the big city clubs would start to take over. Behind me is a really fantastic football. It's the 1925 Scottish Cup final match ball. Quite often for a Scottish Cup final, it was such a high profile match that it would be well remembered for many years afterwards, and you actually see that the ball itself is decorated. It's decorated in the colours of the two cup finalists, Celtic on one side and Dundee on the other. There was a very, very famous goal scored by Celtic. Patsy Gallagher, a very famous Celtic player, got possession of the ball, and as he often did, he kind of weaved his way into towards the goal. But having got to the goal with the ball, there were too many players in front of him, and he was obviously struggling to get away through to score the goal. And famously, he put the ball between his legs and did a flip, a somersault over the Dundee players, and flicked the ball into the net. Queen's Park had won the first 3 Scottish Cups in succession, but by the kind of mid to late 1870s, Vale of Leven started to seriously challenge the supremacy of Queen's Park, and Vale of Leven themselves would go on to win the Scottish Cup 3 times in a row as well. A special chalice, the Living Cup, was presented to the players, and the story goes that every year the players as veterans would meet up once a year to remember winning the Scottish Cup during that brilliant era, and to drink from the chalice and talk about old times. Celtic played Rangers in the final in 1909. The first match ended in a draw after 90 minutes, and under the competition rules a replay was called. That match also ended in a draw, and yet another replay was called. That game also ended in a draw, and the fans were expecting extra time to be played. It didn't help at the end of the game when the players lingered around the edge of the pitch, unsure what was going to happen. They were then called off the pitch, and it very quickly became clear that the game wasn't going to be played on into extra time, and the circumstances then changed, and the atmosphere got quite ugly, and both sets of fans actually came together to really vent their anger against the football authorities. So there was a riot that day at Hampden Park, Celtic fans and Rangers fans actually coming together to vent their frustration. But a lot of damage was done to the stadium. The turnstiles were set on fire, the goal posts were torn down, and when the fire brigade came to put out the fires, even they were attacked as well. Sometimes think that it was the two sets of fans opposing each other, but actually it was really quite different that day. It was really the football fans coming together, really upset at really a feeling of being exploited financially with yet another game being called. But because of the damage that happened to the stadium that particular time, the cup was never presented to a winning team. And so if you look at the plaque in the museum for 1909, it simply says "Cup withheld." Time in the 1980s, the big two of Scottish football, the big two of Glasgow, Celtic and Rangers, were being challenged significantly from the northeast of Scotland. Aberdeen Football Club and Dundee United Football Club were incredibly successful over that period of time, led by Jim McLean and Sir Alec Ferguson. Behind me in the display case is one of the shirts, triumphant shirts worn by Gordon Strachan of Aberdeen in 1984 when Aberdeen won the Scottish Cup. They would win the trophy 3 times in a row during that fantastic period for the club. And whilst Dundee United were very successful as well over that period, the one area that actually they struggled in was the Scottish Cup. There was a bit of a hoodoo for Dundee United. They would get to the Scottish Cup finals over that period of time, but quite often would come up short, and it would be 1994 before Dundee United would finally get their hands on the trophy. The Scottish Cup is the oldest trophy for association football, so within the global game of association football, there is not a trophy on the planet older than the trophy behind me. It's the crown jewels of the museum collection. It only leaves the museum once every year for about 25 minutes, and that's on Cup Final Day, when the original trophy is still presented to the winning team. And after the match, when the teams come back in, we wait outside the dressing room of the winning team and we swap the trophies over, so that the club now takes away an exact copy of the original trophy. The very first medal is the first ever winners' medal of 1874, when Queen's Park defeated Clydesdale 2-0. If you look at the medal, you'll see it's actually quite a poor quality medal. When the first Scottish Cup took place in season 1873-74, only 16 teams entered the competition. But if you move forward 11 years to the 1885 final, and you look at the medal that Renton Football Club won in 1885, it's solid gold and it's hallmarked, because by that time there really was a national game. But we call it the explosion of football, and there were two reasons for it. International football, the Scotland v England fixture, and the Scottish Cup competition. Together, those two major aspects of Scottish football turned what was really an amateur game, a recreational game, into a national industry.